the delicate balance Victoria Advocate tries to achieve by being nonpartisan and trying to make everybody happy, which we know is impossible. And also, he's going to speak to the challenging times that today's journalists face. In case you didn't notice, we're facing some challenging times. That's a big understatement today. I don't think we've seen media under attack quite this way, at least in my lifetime. So I think all of us agree, good sound journalism is more important now than ever before. Chris is going to be having one of his colleagues tape this for live Facebook feed. So I would ask you, please, I know we're an enthusiastic, please hold your questions to the end. This really is a talk. It's not a back and forth debate or anything like that. So hold your questions till the end. Please sign your cell phone if you haven't already. And Chris, thank you very much for being our speaker tonight. It's always great to see you.
Thank you, Gary, for that kind introduction. Is this all working okay for everybody? Everybody hear me all right? Great. Well, I appreciate being here, and it's a topic near and dear to my heart, and it is such an important one that I did prepare some remarks, but I'm happy to afterwards take any questions. I enjoy a good discussion, lively discussion about the newspaper in particular, which is my expertise, the Victoria Advocate. But my title of my speech is a nonpartisan cause, support for the First Amendment. Kind of a dry title, but it's an important one. I've thought about I need to liven it up with a reference to one of my favorite movies of all time, which the subtitle would be, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Being an Enemy of the American People. But when I spoke several years ago to the Calhoun County Republicans, I described upholding the First Amendment as a conservative principle. Now that I'm speaking to a group of Democrats, perhaps I should say supporting journalism is the most progressive thing you could ever do. For the Calhoun Republicans, I read my favorite Thomas Jefferson quote. And were it left to me to decide whether we should have a government without newspapers or newspapers without a government, I should not hesitate a moment to prefer the latter. Wonderful. Given that I'm speaking now to Democrats, perhaps I should say Jefferson was a member of the Democratic Republican Party. But at the risk of being accused of presenting alternative facts, let me go get my history straight. The Democratic Republican Party eventually became what you know now as the Republican Party. So you can't claim Jefferson. But so let's turn instead to John F. Kennedy. In 1962, he called the press, quote, an invaluable arm of the presidency as a check really on what's going on in the administration. Although he didn't like what he called, quote, the abrasive quality of the press, particularly after we call the Bay of Pigs fiasco, he said, quote, there isn't any doubt that we couldn't do the job at all in a free society without a very, very active press. So take it from Jefferson or from JFK, it's up to you. Politicians have always criticized the press, and sometimes justifiably so. Until recently, though, support for the First Amendment has always been a nonpartisan issue. Sadly, our president is trying to change that. My jaw hit the floor when I saw President Trump had tweeted the news media were the enemy of the American people. The enemy of the American people. You know, I'm just a local newspaper editor, but I always thought of the free press as the foundation of our democracy. We certainly make our share of mistakes, but we're the good guys, not the enemy. I spent a career as a newspaper editor trying to advocate for journalism and for news literacy. After Trump's tweet, I spent a lost weekend on social media trying to do this with my 5,000 Facebook friends. I struggled to keep the discussion from becoming partisan. Inevitably, Democrats would jump in on my Facebook page to criticize the president, and Republicans would defend him. I wasn't able to cut through the partisan noise. Then I read a brilliant speech by Bret Stephens, deputy editorial page editor of the conservative Wall Street Journal. He recently delivered an address honoring Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter beheaded by terrorists in 2002. Stephens focused his talk on intellectual integrity in the age of Donald Trump. He covered much more ground than I can tonight and did so with much more power and skill than I can muster. I encourage you to read his entire piece, though. You can get out your smartphones and and start doing that now. I'll text you the link if you want. For brevity's sake, I'll offer only one quote from Stephen's speech. He said, quote, he wrote, "Ideologically, the president is trying to depose so-called mainstream media in favor of the media he likes, Breitbart, News, and the rest. Another way of making this point is to say that he's trying to substitute news for propaganda, information for boosterism. What even is, I would ask, the mainstream media in the 21st century? Is it Hollywood? Is it CBS, NBC, ABC? Is it Fox News? Is it Rush Limbaugh? How about all the links your crazy friend shares on Facebook? To be an educated consumer in the digital age, it matters how you answer this question. Your locally and family-owned Victoria Advocate has little in common with Good Morning America or Huffington Post, yet we're lumped into that same bucket all the time. It would be tempting to try to argue the president isn't talking about your hometown newspaper when he says of reporters, quote, "I would never kill them, but I do hate them. And some of them are such lying, disgusting people, it's true." Lying, disgusting people. I grew up knowing that Superman was a reporter. He fights for truth, justice, and the American way. In my speech to Calhoun Republicans, I ticked off a list of examples in which advocate reporters had helped our local governments operate better. Of course, not all of our local officials, elected officials involved, would agree with my assessment of our reporting on city council or county commission violations of the Texas Open Meetings Act, or the improper handling of a small town's municipal development district funds. Some certainly have complained about this scrutiny, and that's a fair discussion to have. But these local officials have always listened to the concerns raised by our reporting. They've never before tried to dismiss what we write as, quote, fake news. They've never before said they hate us. That's because our 170-year-old newspaper has a rich tradition of public service. We value honesty, fairness, respectfulness, and service to our community. Our slogan is, "From here, for here," since 1846. We base our business on long-term subscriptions and relationships, not clickbait headlines or hit-and-run reporting. Since Trump started regularly beating up the press, I've seen the tone of some readers and some public officials get uglier than ever in my 35-year newspaper career. For example, when we introduced the USA Today section in November of 2015, readers flooded us with calls and comments of support, really unlike much else we'd received in a long time. We added the section as part of our MORE campaign to give readers additional national and international coverage while keeping our focus on local news you can't get anywhere else. That, after all, is our franchise. This election cycle, though, changed that praise for some. We've actually had a couple of readers cancel their Victoria Advocate subscriptions because they think USA Today beats up too much on Trump. This growing public desire to have all the news fit neatly into your firmly established worldview alarms me. Some Democrats are equally guilty of this. Our regular Democratic blogger, my friend Mike right here, Gomez, tells me about people he knows who have canceled their subscriptions because they don't like the number of conservative letters to the editor guest columns that we get that the Victoria Advocate publishes. To that I say, reality check. We live in a community that voted more than 2-1 for Trump. Why wouldn't we naturally get more conservative than liberal letters to the editor? Regardless, why would you want to not know about what's happening in a community because you disagree with a letter to the editor or because you don't like the national news the paper contains? Do you really want to live in a community or a world without a free press?
No.
We know how Jefferson and JFK answered this question, but the continued survival of legitimate news organizations such as your Victoria Advocate demands Democrats, Republicans, and everyone else answer with a loud and clear endorsement of a free press. That's my soapbox, but I'm happy to take questions. Go ahead.
I'm kind of wondering if you think that maybe some of the gerrymandering that takes place legally is actually subverting some of our democratic principles, and what can we do and how can the advocate go about pushing towards something more normalizing? I know it's not a huge thing for our community from that, but in a lot of other, it is.
Yeah. It's a very good question, the gerrymandering question, and I certainly have my own concerns about that. I would say, as a local newspaper editor, I'm not an expert on that subject, but I would say that I have seen in my lifetime and through the gerrymandering, I think it plays a large part of that, a much greater polarization of our politics, and there is not much of a move toward the middle anymore. And that is troubling, and it's a challenge for us as a newspaper to try to find those voices who are looking for the middle, I guess, looking for compromise, looking for what we agree on and what draws us together as a people, versus the shouting on either end of the spectrum. And that's a challenge, because newspaper stories are about, to some extent, about tension, about conflict, and but if you go overboard with that, you're missing the real story in the middle. And that goes a little farther afield from your question, but I think it's a good question. I think a lot about that as a newspaper is try to reflect the whole community, not just those who have the loudest voices.
Chris, not a question, but two quick comments.
Sure.
Number one, to those of you that grew up in Detroit, I don't think you realize how receptive this newspaper is to comments from its public. You won't encounter that everywhere. Secondly, how well they cover what's happening in local government, and that's even improving. And you categorically tell us everything that they have done in our city council and our county commissioners courts. You can search for that sort of thing in vain in other towns, Corpus, Austin, San Antonio, Waco, that I've lived in and read the newspaper. They do cover our local government, and that has a great impact on our life, and we need that information. Finally, if you've got another point of view, write up a letter to the editor.
Thank you.
They publish mine. They publish a lot more of Mitzi's, both letters and guest columns. They are receptive to that sort of thing. I don't think they're going to pledge to publish everyone, but they'll certainly give it, I think, due consideration.
I appreciate those comments. Thank you very much. And the last point, letters to the editor. I would encourage everyone interested to write a letter to the editor. It's very easy to do. Send it to letters@vicad.com. Everybody watching on Facebook, I don't care what your politics are. If you want your voice to be heard, write a letter to the editor. It's a great way to do it. And to your first point, I don't think it's recognized enough in the community, because people haven't necessarily seen other places necessarily. Some of you have, but not everybody has. And this locally owned paper, family owned paper, is really special. The McCaney-Roberts family are really important people who care a great deal about the community, and that reflects in their newspapers. The corporate journalism is a whole other thing I can go on a soapbox about, but the fact that the owners live here, care about here, that's a huge difference in the newspaper.
I just wanted to say that I really thank the Advocate for providing a way to promote dialogue instead of just the debate. Because the debate a lot of times is I win, you win, I lose, and the dialogue is where we come through for the problem solving and the resolution. So I have to say, I think the Advocate is doing a good job of that from what I see, and I wanted to thank you.
Perhaps I missed it. Is the Advocate going to make a statement about the First Amendment and that the press is not the enemy of American people? If I missed it, let me know.
Okay.
But
Well, this is a pretty big statement I just made, and it's going to be in the paper tomorrow.
Okay, good.
Go ahead, Tammy.
So, the online poll, how did that turn out? Because when I voted in the online poll, it was running 50-50, and do you believe the media is the enemy of the people? And really concerning. I know that people can get online from wherever, but
I would check. Our online poll, I don't remember off the top of my head, I think it did end up with about 60% or so saying we're not the enemy.
Oh, good.
So that's still 40% we think we are, but it's very concerning. But I would say about our online polls, I want to emphasize this point. I say that to everybody. They're not scientific. They are only a reflection of what the people who who push the button say
All of
they're
them
not.
are like
Yeah, they're all not scientific, but
They're all-
but the fact that even anybody would say that the press is the enemy of the American people just sort of
It's
it
cuckoo.
blows my mind. Honestly.
Yeah.
It does. It does. I don't- but I hear it from all sides. And I have to tell you, I got an email just while sitting here looking at my email, which I shouldn't be doing, but.
It's okay.
But it was from our customer service rep who, whenever there's anybody who cancels a subscription for content reasons, they'll let me know so I can try to call them and talk to them and see what I can learn from them. And my philosophy with that, and I tell this to my reporters all the time, is when you talk to anybody, listen for what they're trying to tell you. Listen to where they're right. I mean, a lot of people, they'll tell you a lot of things and you're pretty sure they're wrong on almost all of it. But even if there's 10% of it where they're right, you're learning something. Yeah. But so that's what I say, listen for that 10% and try to get better. But this email from the customer service rep was somebody was canceling their subscription because we beat up too much on Democrats. I don't know. I'm going to call this person tomorrow. I want to hear more about what that is.
Yeah,
but I get those calls. I get those calls on both sides of the political spectrum, is what I'm saying. And it just sort of it goes back to the point I made in my speech. It's like, do you think you really read the paper with the expectation that you have to agree with every word in it? I don't understand. You read it because
Our president.
you read it because you think you get a little more informed, you know a little bit more about your community, you're a little bit more engaged in your community, maybe you're entertained a little bit, but you read it for those reasons, not because you're not going to be challenged in some way. Legitimate news organizations cite their sources. You can see what the reporting is. You can see if the reporting is shallow or lacks context, but it's reporting, and you can make your judgment about that reporting. So I just encourage everybody to do that, and I think probably all of you are doing that. You're here because you're interested, but I do get frustrated at that point. Go ahead.
I'm not one that's ever really read Breitbart news items, and so I'd like to get, you probably may have, can you give us a little insight into kind of where this president is going, other than off the edge?
I'm focused my talk on being nonpartisan, although it does certainly is difficult to do that because obviously the president making these comments is a Republican. But I would say the same thing if you were a Democrat. But Breitbart News, when you point out Breitbart News, and there are other websites like that, to me, they're sites that just invent stuff. They don't, they just invent material out of thin air, sort of. If you read the stories, you'll see there's not clear sourcing, there are headlines. The headline it's not in the story, it's not supported in the story. There's all kinds of ways to be tipped off that these are not real stories. And so I encourage people to look to legitimate news organizations and read those. And you know, I guess the buzzword for that now is the mainstream media. But to me, it's you know what you're getting from a newspaper, from a magazine, you know, a trusted news source. It's been around. It has a reputation that has a tradition of journalism, and these sort of pop-up websites that don't have that. I don't know what to say about it. It amazes me, but I get people posting that stuff from the left and the right all the time. I'm like, I don't know. Go ahead.
I'm a long-time subscriber.
Thank you.
For years. And I almost didn't make it here today because I thought it was a snow day. Non sequitur. Talking about how this stuff comes about.
I don't know. You have a question, mechanism?
Yes, I do. I've been impressed with how your reporters know where the stories are, know how to know what's going on behind closed doors, know to get out in the community and be there. And contrasting that with the Guatemala City newspaper that I was reading that said so-and-so came into our office today and told us. Do you all get tips from insiders, or how
appreciate it. And we are, every day I guess I consider us, we're only as good as today's paper. And so I appreciate it when we get the story and we're out on top of it, not in front of it. But there are other examples where I feel like we didn't quite get it soon enough or well enough. But we do. I mean, part of the big advantage we have as a newspaper is that we've been around 171 years, that people know us. They know, I've been editor for 10 years. Our managing editor, Becky Cooper, has been here for 31 years. That certainly helps. Of course, Mrs. McKinney's been here forever.
Yeah.
John Roberts is not in the office every day, but he knows, and Dan Easton and his wife, Camille Easton. I mean, we're very connected to community. So the people who are doing things let us know what they're doing, and we follow up with that. And I have sort of bashed social media a little bit, but I would say that things like Facebook, things like these events, people who are involved in things do let us know things that way too. So we try to use every reporting tool we can, and we try to hire the best reporters we can from everywhere we can. Our local government reporter right now is Karn Dingra. He was a SMU grad who worked in DC for a number of years before he wanted to come back to Texas, and has done a very good job. And I could go down the list of reporters. Laura Garcia is covering health and nonprofits for us, does a terrific job. She's a Texas State grad, just really top-notch people. And it just really, we're only as good as our reporters are out doing the beat work.
This is just kind of a silly question. It's just my curiosity. Since you brought up reporters, how does a small town newspaper deal with the high turn, which I'm assuming, having been a long-term reader of advocate, how do you deal with that high turnover of reporters?
It's a challenge. Yeah, the turnover in reporting ranks is definitely. I describe myself a lot of times as like I'm a basketball fan because I'm a KU grad, college basketball, and it's like being a basketball coach. You're constantly recruiting for the best talent, and then you get them all just finally how you want them, then they graduate. And so it's tough, but like we just lost Sarah Steves, who's a wonderful reporter, but she got hired away by the Times-Picayune on this special project team that they're doing to report on the vanishing coastline. So that's a huge loss for us, but we have moving into her be Jessica Priest, who is a terrific reporter, and so we just keep on. We take a hit every once in a while as we lose somebody and try to move that working around and come back. But what's the best thing we have going for us is that continuity I talked about in our ownership and in our management team, because that helps a lot as we have to train up new reporters. Go ahead, Danny. Yeah.
Two quick questions. So, I wonder if you want to comment on fellow Texan Dan Rather's comment on the print media being more on top of it as opposed to television, where legislation tune in for an opinion poll with a moderator.
Right.
We got the opinions flying around. And Dan Rather said the print is kicking TV's rear end because they are doing reporting and writing, and they don't have opinions going back and forth, back and forth.
Right.
And the second part is for my friend Sarah Louise, who wants to know, have you seen who is behind the ads on television that say, don't watch this? Who's paying for those? And trying to direct people, or have you seen, has anyone else seen them ads?
I don't think I've seen those. Those are commercials on TV. I don't know if I've seen them.
To watch local channels, local news.
Oh, local news channel.
Oh, and not watch cable news.
And I watch cable news.
I haven't seen them either.
Yeah, I don't know that. I know I've seen some commercials in which the local affiliates are kind of concerned about what's going to happen to them if everybody basically gets their content directly from the source. Because the local affiliates, that whole model is really being disrupted by technology. Everybody watches HBO on the go or whatever you can watch through satellite, all these things. So the whole tradition of network news, or network, not just news, but TV content producers, going through local affiliates to get their content distributed, that's really changing. But I'll stop at that point. But the first point about Dan Rather in print, I definitely agree with that. I think that it's really difficult in this environment to help people understand that when they're watching cable TV and they're just people shouting heads at each other, that's just commentary. It's not reporting. It's just commentary and entertainment too. Yeah, Good Morning America is just, there's a lot of entertainment there and very little bit of news. And so it confuses people. It does. I think I get why people are very confused about what is actually news now. And in the newspaper, it's pretty clear where the news is. It's on the front page. It's on page 2. The viewpoints page is separated. It's clear, and there's a structure there. And our reporters are all about getting the news. They're not about doing commentary. And I think I would encourage people to turn off the TV and read the newspaper. That's my bias.
I know that we can ask Chris questions all night long, but I think we're gonna have to head it off.
I'm happy to stay later.
And, he knows how to newspaper get out.
Yeah.